There we go. Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Hershey at Home with Hershey's, and thank you for joining us for our wellness today with Connectable Life. And we've got Stacey and Jess here with us every week. And today we've got a very fantastic speaker who's Wolfgang, who was an architect by profession, but has changed to wellness. You know, you've got to live your passion. You only have one life, and you've got to give it your best shot. And you have to make sure that you're living your passion. And your mission in life is to find your passion, and your purpose in life is to give that away. Once you find it, you have to share it with the world. That's why God put you. He puts a seed of greatness into everybody, and it's up to us to nurture it and grow it. And that's what we do here at Hershey's every single day. We grow everybody we come in contact with. Even our customers, our staff, everybody, we want them to be better and to go out feeling amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Stacey to come on in and introduce Wolfgang to us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the lovely comments. We're so pleased that you are here on a Monday morning joining us for our Motivational Mondays. So thank you. Wolfgang, thank you so much for joining us. Wolfgang is an NLP and advanced certified neurozone coach practitioner, focusing on mindfulness and performance. His coaching approach is based on the practice of mindfulness. He believes that if we start by mindfully rediscovering our authentic selves, we can better articulate our direction or purpose. If we also mindfully transform our behaviors by optimizing our brain-body systems, we can perform exceedingly well while serving our purpose. This process will simplify our goals, increase our value, and give us the motivation needed to achieve them. He also believes that when we collectively and creatively use our knowledge, skills, and expertise to allocate resources together and distribute these resources, we can definitely survive and thrive. Not just survive, we can thrive. On a more personal level, he is a very keen observer, abstract thinker, traveler, and yoga practitioner with a passion for helping people to become more aware of themselves. He believes that if we can all learn to increase our level of self-awareness, we might become more responsible and accountable human beings. We might even become more responsive to other human beings, including our environment, from which we can learn that mindfulness will always yield positive results. So thank you so much, Wolfgang, for being with us today, and on to you.
Wow, thank you very much, Stacey, Jess, and Margaret. Who is that guy? That's quite an amazing bio. Now I need to live up to it. So yes, today we are talking about energy, well, the awareness around energy blockers, energy depleters. But the question is, firstly, what is energy? So maybe if all of you who are joining us today, if you like, you can maybe just type in the chat box, give us your definition of energy. What does it mean to you? And perhaps also give us a score, what your energy is like this morning. I find, especially on Mondays, energy seems to be a little lower, depending on what you've done over the weekend. And that's also quite a good reflection that a reflective practice that one can do on a Mondays is to sort of check in with yourself. What's my energy like? Is it low or is it high? And then maybe relate that to what you've done over the weekend. Did you do exercises or activities that boosted your energy, or did you do activities that depleted your energy? And so I just see here already, energy is a vibration of the cells in your body. Love that. Energy is vibrant, good health. I love Mondays. And who said that? Margaret. Margaret's got great energy. I mean, she is, I think, the example, or if you see energy in the dictionary, there might be a picture of Margaret right there. And that's great. We definitely have people like that in our lives who boost our energy, who make us feel good about ourselves. And then we may have some people who are the opposite. We've got people who can drain our energy. We can sometimes call them energy vampires because it's almost, they have that effect of not even touching you, but just in how they are kind of like, they're a bit of a downer, Debbie Downer. And so, yeah, I mean, that's got all to do with what energy really is. So if what we are talking about today specifically is emotional energy and physical energy, and the two go hand in hand. And so, if when I was listening to my bio again, it sounds quite scientific in a way, and we can look at it from that perspective, but also not too much, because everyone needs to relate and understand with what we're talking about today. So if we're talking about emotional and physical energy, let's look at emotional energy first. So another term or word for that is our mood state. So if we have a positive mood state, then our energy is higher, and if we have a negative mood state, then our energy is lower. Then with physical energy, we need physical energy to complete tasks, labor, hard labor, or just doing our general tasks during the day. But then we also need brain energy to also complete tasks, solve problems, and deal with customers, and everything that takes energy for us to operate, do our jobs, and then also to become more goal directed. And this is where our mindset comes in again. What is our mind set on? Is it set on a certain direction to get a certain reward or a certain yield, or is it set towards negativity and not wanting to achieve anything, rather staying in bed the whole day? I'm talking about complete opposites now, but that in a nutshell is energy, and that's what we are going to talk about today. We can also view energy as a currency. When we hear the word currency, we think about money, and it's very much like that as well. We don't have an endless resource of money, so therefore energy is also not endless. It is definitely finite when it comes to our bodies and our brains. So we need to also start to think about ways of how to replenish our energy, how to replenish our currency. And that will then define how we perform in our lives. If you want to go to the extreme again, how can you be the best, the highest performer in your job, in your life? Or is it just about living a good and fulfilled life? So I think these things are definitely important to us, especially today. Margaret was talking about the new normal, talking about traveling around and thinking about, or just noticing that things have definitely come back to where we were maybe pre-pandemic. But things have definitely changed around. Mindsets are different. Rules have slightly changed. There's been more perspective on everyday things that we used to take for granted is now completely different. Or many things have shifted. So now to adapt to the new normal, we definitely need to also become aware of what in our lives are energy boosters and what in our lives are energy blockers and also energy leakers. So what else can I say on that? So if we want to, so I just want to see what you guys are chatting about here in the.
No, I think positive affirmations really, really do help. We do them at Precious every day. Positive affirmations, Robin Banks, I got carried away listening to you and typing at the same time. He
Mm.
says, I'm brilliant, I'm bright, I'm a radiant being of light, I'm a dynamic peak performer, I'm a fantastic life transformer. And he says that every day. And if you do that, it definitely lifts your energy levels. I think you have to consciously do things to lift your energy levels. You can't just say, I really wish my energy levels were high. They won't go high, they'll stay low. The other thing is to avoid people who, as you say, suck you dry. You know, they just, I mean, I often get people, I never forget, I had this one lady, she was a judge's wife, and she used to phone me, and I just said, oh, I just knew that I'd be doing, it was in the old days of fax machine. She used to phone me. I used to drive from Durban North to Musgrave Road to put paper in a fax machine for her because she couldn't do it, you know. And and there was no good saying no to her because she wouldn't take no for an answer. And she used to drain me. And eventually one day I said to her, I'm so sorry, but I think I'm going to have to divorce you as a customer because this is not working. And you know, and I did, and then she went and irritated the rest of the world, and I didn't have to take those phone calls all the time. I think it's quite difficult to sort of cut that thread. And Wolfgang, you listen to people, you like listening to people. I'm a talker, so I just like talking to them. But you're a listener. When people say to you, you hear that and you feel they're draining you, what do you do to stop it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think that ties into the next point of how do we take control over what especially depletes or blocks our energy or drains our energy. So yeah, what I would do is I think I change the topic in you know, also, you know, when you learn communication skills, it's always it always needs to be in a way that you also don't offend the person, or but it also needs to be quite, you know, you need to change the topic, but instead of changing it and making a statement, one could ask a question, but that could also lead into a further, further snowball effect. So yeah, I think it's about maybe, you know, reading the person, but also I think, you know, personally for me, I think the reason why I am such a good listener is not necessarily 100% a strong point. It's also plays into my sort of weakness of not taking the control and say, well, I've been listening to you for the last 20 minutes, and I feel that you are just repeating yourself. And I don't know about you, but I think we need to move on.
Yeah, I think we taught to be, you know, nice and sweet and kind, especially as women. We don't want to be offensive. We don't want to offend anybody. But by the same token, oh my goodness, you know, this is not working for me. I've got to get out of here. So it is a tricky one. And I'm a speaker, so rather than a listener. So I love people who can listen. My husband's a listener. He listens to people's troubles and trials and tribulations, but he doesn't really let it affect him. Where I take it very personally, you know, I take it all personally. Stacey, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, you know, I also love to listen to people and I love to talk. So I like the whole combination of it. And I find that it takes quite a lot for somebody to drain my energy. Like, it's not something that comes naturally for me. So I think that there are different varieties of people. Some people who get drained very easily and others who can take in quite a lot. But I do get to a point, and I have had relationships over the years where I've had to just draw the line. And it's so sad because you don't want to have to do that, but sometimes it's the only way, you know. And just you know, just take a break. Very often it's literally just taking a break that can reset the whole thing and almost renew relationships just by having a short break from a person. And also I found that if I talk about my positivity, if I talk about the things that I've decided to do as a way to try and influence that person to receive more energy in their life, basically, and not become so negative or not become an energy drainer, that it's often a good way to, you know, change the subject and make them think about themselves in that light. Is if you put that situation in your life and how you've managed to, you know, change your energy in that regard. What do you think?
Jess, it's your turn. You tell us
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just sitting before we started and I thought to myself, okay, let me write down, in my opinion, what I think the top 4 energy drainers are, emotional energy drainers. And the first one I put was picking the wrong battles. So, you know, life comes with a million of them, and sometimes we pour so much energy into ones that we maybe don't need to pour that much energy into. And then the second one was our thoughts, that positive mindset versus our negative. That's where we're living. So if we're living in this constant negative energy, we're going to feel like exhausted versus having a positive mindset. And then the next one was other people's opinions. And I think this is where we speak often about boundaries. And the next one goes in line with that, is saying yes to everything. The inability to say no when it's no longer serving us, without feeling like we're being rude or mean. And we often talk about boundary setting, and I think not having healthy boundaries is a huge energy drainer. And it kind of goes in line with the conversations that we've had so far, in terms of these relationships that make you feel wanting, that make you feel exhausted. And you go for a 20-minute coffee chat, but it feels like it was 2 hours, and it feels like they're always the one that's talking, and it can be exhausting. So I think obviously boundaries can be easier said than done, but it is something that the more you do, the more natural it feels. And I think both parties in the relationship start to learn the goodness in it and how it actually helps the relationship. So I think in terms of those relationships that feel draining, the go-to would be setting those boundaries of, you know, in a nice way, saying thanks, but no thanks. Yeah.
Wolfgang,
and then I think,
sorry.
Yeah, just other people's opinions. We spend so much time worrying about what's right for other people and what they'll think and what they'll say and what they'll do versus what's actually good for us.
I think we're taught to consider others so much that now we're being taught to consider ourselves. Wolfgang, how do you feel about that? You know, we used to always put everybody else first, but now we're being taught to put ourselves first, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to be happy in yourself before you can go and give it to other people.
Exactly, and I think, and I love all of your thoughts, because in thinking about it in you know, maybe in a more neuroscientific way, or in a scientific way of how we, so what you guys are talking about is definitely, so we're talking about, so what, especially what Jess was saying about other people's opinions and conversations that we have with people. And we were also talking about these energy vampires who we feel that, you know, we take up all our time, and then, you know, when you reflect on that conversation, you feel like, did it actually add anything? Did it add value to my life? Did it add value to anyone else's life? So I think in that, you know, if we're talking about, especially that energy for us is finite, you know, if you think about it, every single day we have, you know, if you think about your cell phone, for example, we charge it overnight, and then we kind of like, oh, nervous, and we use it sparingly and see if it will last the whole day. It's pretty much how we operate. So we need to think more economically about how we use our energy. And so despite what we're talking about now, obviously there are other things we need to focus on: proper nutrition, enough sleep. Doing exercise during the day also generates energy. It's an energy boost, especially emotional energy, mood state. But then this, especially with the topic that we're talking about now, is that, you know, we need to decide, okay, and it's maybe starting with how the question Margaret asked me, how do you change the topic or end a conversation? I think one needs to ask yourself, does this add value? What is the value here at the moment? Can we carry on with this conversation and create extra value out of this? Or is it an executive decision that needs to be made to either change the direction of conversation or end it? And that's why there's this term in neuroscience that they use that with regards to energy, is that it is a value tagging system. So what happens in our brains, we have, and this happens automatically, our brains want to use the least amount of energy for the highest yield. What that means is we will do the smallest, we'll expend the least amount of energy to get the biggest reward. And I think in today's society, it's become so easy to do that. You know, one example is to order food online, for example. You don't need to do anything. Your biggest worry is what you're going to eat.
Yeah.
And then a few minutes later, and then we also get impatient because it takes a while. But you know, everything is so instant these days. So I think our brains have started to change in a way that we have too many options, and life has become very instant. So I think it's become a little harder for us to delineate what is the value there. So basically, to come back to the brain structure again, is we've got a default response and we've got an executive function response. Default response is anything that is unconscious. So these are things that we do without even knowing that we do it. Thinking of, you know, one example could be, if you're talking about a habit, a good habit in this case is brushing our teeth in the morning. Yeah, sure, maybe once in a while we forget, but it is already so programmed in our minds that that is what we do in the morning. And you'll ask yourself, did I brush my teeth this morning? And then you'll realize, you know, maybe a breath check, whatever, and they're like, oh, I did, but I didn't even notice that, because that's already so deeply entrenched that it's become unconscious. The executive function part of the brain is very much the conscious part. So, and then between that is a salient network. And this is all happening in the background, where cues come in and our brain decides, does this need to go to the default network, or does this need to go to the executive rational thinking part of the brain? And now talking about ways of, you know, ending a conversation or taking steps to lay down boundaries, that's very much rational thinking. That's very much executive function of making those executive decisions to stop doing that, because you have now become aware, this is draining my energy. This person I see once a week at work, I can't listen to her anymore because it's just negative energy and it's pulling me down. So what can one do? Maybe take action and give some feedback to the colleague and say, hey man, I really like you, but what you are talking about daily is quite negative. I don't know if you've noticed. And it's starting to affect me, and I've noticed that it affects other people around you as well. So that could be a way of addressing a situation like that. Or easy way out is avoid the person. But we all know with avoidance, you know, it's almost like making a plan, not postponing it, or postponing a plan eventually becomes a cancelled plan in that way of not really dealing with the core issue. But yeah, so that's just sort of like touching a bit on how we can make those executive decisions to stop the things that are blocking our energy or also leaking our energy. And especially about the things that we can also only make changes of the things that we are aware, meaning the things that we are conscious of. And so, because most of our brain and body's functions are unconscious, our habits and our behaviors, we just operate as, you know, a machine that needs to do a little task, but we don't really think, we're not really mindful of how and what we are busy doing. And over time, the way our bodies also work, if we're talking about stress, for example, and especially now throughout whole of the pandemic, it's been a very stressful situation because everything is uncertain. Our brains don't really know how to deal with it because everywhere we look, we need to solve a problem that doesn't make sense. And that the only response our bodies have to that is to stress. So we get a signal again into our brains that go, this is maybe a threat. And so I don't know how to deal with it. And then it just, it goes into an automatic stress response without us even knowing that. And over time, that becomes chronic stress. And chronic stress is the #1 energy leaker. And that's all unconscious. And that's why we all eventually burn out.
Well, hopefully we won't burn out, but I think we do have blockers, and you have things that block the energy in you, and you just feel that you're going along, and then you have this block. How do you release an energy block?
Very good question. So one could also call these biohacks, a very popular term these days. And I think in my opinion, what that means is doing simple things that has existed since the beginning of time, I think, and something that is also quite natural. But because sometimes we'll find if you are a very pessimistic or negative type of person, you'll find this quite hard to do. Yet again, speaking to our brains, using the least amount of energy to get the highest yield. So that could be in the opposite direction as well. Whereas if we're talking about behaviors and habits, they are simply neural pathways that are growing, and they are just go on repeat. And if that's good or bad, it's of no consequence to the brain, really. But if we want to change those pathways, we can use these little biohacks. And if we just quickly discuss the energy blockers, 3 big ones are chronic stress, which we've already spoken about, negative thought patterns, no surprise there, and then destructive habits, habits that substance abuse, all these things that we use, overeating or whatever, to sort of make us feel comfortable and so on, and just escaping the reality. So to boost our energy, we kind of just need to do the opposite. Now, if we're talking about negative thought patterns, for example, that's the pessimistic way. It's always, thinking about doom and gloom and telling yourself, oh no, I can't do this. I don't have enough money, or it's too far to walk, or I would never be able to do that. Or maybe also just being in a very judgmental mindset of and jealousy, like, oh, you see all these other people achieving, and I can't possibly do that because I don't have all the resources, or I don't have this, and maybe those words, I don't want, or I can't. It's all this. It's a repetition of negativity. So to become conscious of that and change your words, you can only, change the words of I can, I do want, I will. Over time, if you repeat that starts to change your mindset into a positive thought pattern, which we call optimism. So being optimistic about the outlook of a day is a start. And sometimes if we sort of like at the beginning of this shift, sometimes we need to fake it a bit before it starts to stick. So perhaps if you wake up in the morning, instead of dreading the day and going like, oh, I don't know how this day is going to end and I don't want to get up, perhaps you should change that shift. And even if it's something that you write down before you go to bed and you read in the morning, go like, today is going to be a great day. And I'm actually excited to get to lunch because I've planned a lunch meeting with someone who I haven't seen in a while. So it's looking forward to something rather than harking in the past of like, oh, from, you know, what history tells, last week was shit, sorry. So maybe this week will be the same. So it is just becoming aware of all the negative things you are thinking and saying, and literally just changing it into a positive. That's one way. Optimism. Becoming curious, more curious about, we can, you know, use the same example as you know, looking forward to the day, becoming curious about what will today bring. Maybe today will be different than yesterday. Maybe if I rather go to a different coffee shop, if I go get my coffee somewhere else on the way to work, that could have a different result. Maybe I'll learn something along the way. Maybe I'll be late for work, but then in that there was something that was learned, or you've made a new friend. Another one could be using humor. I mean, we all know when we have a good laugh, how do you feel after that? And I think this is something that we've lost quite often, and we don't laugh anymore. You know, we don't tell jokes because we've become so serious these days about the dreaded coronavirus and what it's doing to, you know, the impact it has on all of us. That's become very serious, you know, and just trying to, you know, they say humor is a virtue of transcendence. So you're transcending yourself out of this serious situation, making light of it. We want to be lighter. Energy wants to be light and flow. That's one biohack. And just, I think, to add there, humor is a tricky one because it can sometimes become sarcasm. I know many of us enjoy sarcasm a lot as a form of humor, but that is a tricky one because I think that can easily go over into a negative vibe. Then the other one is, and I quite like this at the end of the day. So we're talking about curiosity and being optimistic about what the day will bring. So sort of reflecting on that in the beginning of the day, and at the end of the day, having a practice of gratitude. Then reflecting back again to see, hey, what did go well this day? What can I be grateful for? And to not only think of this, you know, if you do start with this practice, not only to repeat the same things, to say like, oh yeah, I got home safe, thank goodness, or no one asked me something too difficult at work, or yeah, okay, I have something to eat. You know, all the basic things. Oh yes, I am grateful for my family. But over time, that just then becomes the usual suspects, and it's the effect that gratitude has on our brains and our bodies. It starts losing its magic. So also trying to force yourself to think of something differently every single day. Try to find that silver lining somewhere. And it is amazing how that works. You immediately feel so much better, and you will also sleep much better. The last point I have, which one can apply everywhere, and this has also become very prevalent these days, is talking about mindfulness, applied mindfulness. And this is quite an interesting one because it's difficult, I think, for many of us who haven't really considered what it means, truly embodying what being mindful really means. And so it's sort of like, you know, comes from the Eastern philosophy, in a sense of being more present with yourself rather than worrying about what will happen tomorrow, and also harking on what happened in the past. To me, that's my understanding of how anxiety exists in our lives. We are constantly worried about the future and also worried about what happened in the past, whereas not being present in this moment and actually taking in what is the most real and the most literal life we are living is now. This conversation we're having now is the present moment, and what we do and think here matters the most. And that is, in short, mindfulness. To get there, I think to sort of go on a mindfulness crash course, the first thing that we need to start doing is to silence our minds. And that going back again to the Eastern philosophy, meditation, and so on, now it's not Eastern or Western anymore. It's what we all need to do as a global population. So we need to, and it's not easy. If it's not a practice, it's not easy. But that is almost like let's call it a biohack again, to start to really understand and grasp what mindfulness is. And that is also a magical gift.
Yeah, I think meditation, a lot of people want to do meditation and a lot of people need to do meditation, but they just don't know where to start. And my story to them is always, just Google it, go to Google and have a look, and then go to YouTube and go YouTube mindfulness and meditation, and it all comes out and you sort of work your own pattern of meditation. I don't think there's a one shoe fits all for meditation. And I think a lot of people need to meditate and they really want to meditate. When somebody comes to you and you feel that meditation would be the greatest thing for them, and we've had so many people on who've told us about meditation, where do people start? The people who are on the show and watching us on Facebook now who don't do meditation, for me, it changed my life, and for so many people, in fact, everybody I speak to who does meditation, it changes your life so much for the better. But to actually get up that much earlier every morning. I was talking to a friend. I sent a friend of mine something yesterday because I get up at 4 o'clock. I said, look, I'm just up at 4 o'clock. She said, I was up at 3:30. And I thought, wow, that's really early. But she has now taken to meditation, getting up 3:30, and she is just spending that time meditating because she says it's changed her whole life. What do you feel about meditation?
Are you asking me?
Yes, and how does somebody start?
So how does someone start? So, and we've spoken about value tagging again before, and I'm going to bring it in again. So value tagging is a result of, so it happens automatically for us, but it is something we can take advantage of. So that is what meditation and mindfulness will give you. It will help you to do your own value tagging. All right. So value tagging is also about, we can also use to unlearn something or learn something, creating a new habit or a new behavior. So a value could also be seen as a strength. So you might have a certain set of values because it is something that you live by and it's a strength of yours. And therefore, if we want to, for example, add something to our routine, such as a meditative practice daily, we could reflect on what our strengths are. For example, being an early riser and going, okay, I get up quite early in the morning, and so what do I do with that extra time? Because it's quite you're setting yourself ahead of many other people. and within that time, we're especially so early in the morning, you have this advantage of it being, talking about energy again, the energy collectively is much, or let's call it vibration in this sense. It is a bit lower. I surely find when I get up early, the air is light. It's quiet. Your thoughts are a bit slower, and I think it's taking advantage of that in that moment to just add 10 minutes, 5 minutes even. Start with 5 minutes, set a timer on your phone, and find a quiet spot where you can sit comfortably. And especially when you start to go into a meditative space, the breath work is super important. And because we all seem to breathe very shallowly. Shallowly, is that a word?
Shallowly.
Shallowly. For some reason. And when we start to activate deep conscious breathing, it calms your nervous system even more. So even though you are quite calm, we need to activate that parasympathetic nervous system so that we move into a very calm state. And so it's almost like preparing your body first before you calm your mind. And this also helps as a biohack when you are very stressed and anxious, is to focus on your breath, deep breathing. So deep breathing means sitting still. If you are sitting in a chair, making sure that you feel grounded, your feet are on the floor, your bum is in the chair, your back has got a good rest, and you can place your right hand on your belly and your left hand on your chest. And so you guys can even start trying this now. And it is about breathing in deeply, but you are breathing down into your belly. Expanding your belly opens up your diaphragm, and that makes space in your heart. So your heart has more space. And when you breathe out and you force the air out, not too harshly, closes the diaphragm again, pressing up against your heart, which sends the signal to your brain that you can go into a calm state. So if you only do that for 3 or 5 minutes as a start, as a meditative practice, and you repeat that daily, you will eventually, it's the what do they call it? Muscle memory, in a way. It's your body remembers what to do to get into that desired state. Margaret, I can't hear you.
Margaret, you're muted.
Margaret, you're on mute.
Sorry, something phoning me incessantly. I was telling them to go away. I'll phone them later. Sorry about that. You weren't supposed to see my mouth moving. Okay.
So yes, so that as a start, if it's just deep conscious breathing as a start, you will notice in your body, and also a good way to notice this is to practice reflection again. Perhaps noticing, how did you feel? What did you feel like before your breathing exercise, your meditative practice, and how did you feel afterwards? Noticing those differences, also giving you that signal or that information to your brain to know, okay, what I've just done is really good for me and I would like to do this again. It's almost the activating the reward pathway again. So good behaviors will bring you good rewards as well.
Fantastic. Okay, sorry, I'm just having a couple of phone computer issues here today. I'm trying to get them right at the same time. Okay, so yeah, I think that what is the difference between prayer and meditation? I'm always there because I used to pray before I started meditating. Now, the thing that I say is when you pray, you talk to God. When you meditate, God talks to you. That's how I explain it. What do you feel about that comment?
So I would say that prayer could be a meditative practice, but in my opinion, I would place that more under the gratitude umbrella. So when we are praying, depending on what it is you are thinking about, or having an internal conversation with your God, with yourself, Yeah, I think it's definitely, it speaks to gratitude, and then also meditation, because we also have different forms of meditation, for example, where, the one being, it's purely focused on the exercise of trying to silence your thoughts and to take control over what you are thinking, because that's a very good practice to notice what does come up in your head the whole time, because we've lost control over that. And so it's interesting to reflect on what is coming up in your mind the whole time. And then, but then we have different kinds of meditations where we could have a mantra that we are saying to us over and over, or it's a meditation called a metta meditation, where we are only what's the word? It's an expansive love meditation. So we are only thinking love and sending love out to everyone. And then we also have, meditations that we want to draw in abundance, for example. And, when we feel we need to draw in energy. And this is maybe on the more sort of vibrational, esoteric sense, where we feel a little weak and we want to draw in good energy, or we want to send out good energy as well. And this is, as Mark rightly said, if you don't know about meditation, Google it, and you will definitely get a lot on it. And there are so many fantastic apps, mindfulness apps, that we can download on our phones that send us reminders every day to do your practice, fantastic reflections on how to think about our thoughts, and just unlearning a lot, and also learning a whole lot on a completely different level than what we find ourselves. For example, if you're talking about how do we replenish energy, what do you spend most of the day taking in? Not talking about food, but what do we listen to? What do we read? If you could do a test on this as well. If you are an avid reader of the news and you stop doing that for 1 week and notice what difference that makes in your life, I guarantee you will feel lighter. Because the news, for example, is heavy with fear. It's heavy with negative information, because that's what sells.
Yeah.
Just to touch on Margaret's point of prayer, I think it also depends on what your goal of the meditation is. Like for me, for example, meditation and mindfulness kind of go hand in hand. It's a time where I clear the dashboard, like we say, silence your thoughts, clear your mind. And for me, prayer does that. It's me handing it over. So I think it depends on what the goal is, what the objective is. But for me, it certainly helps to pray beforehand, because it's, for me, the best way to clear and silence those thoughts.
And it says in the Bible, let go and let God. You've got to let go and let God, and I'm a control freak, and I always have to say to myself, let go and let God, because sometimes you the things you're trying to control, you just can't, and then you have to do that. But I think that meditation definitely helps you to put everything in perspective, and it just our lives are so busy, there's so much happening, there are all these things going on all the time, that just sit and calm yourself in the morning and the evening. I've just recently started doing meditation in the evening as well. It's just amazing, and it's just so good for you, and it just makes you feel so much better about yourself. And that's what this is all about. It's working on yourself and your mind to make sure, because the mind controls the body. body. The body does not control the mind. So if your mind is in control, everything else is in control as well. And I gave my staff a little thing that I do often with people today. And they said, no, my mind doesn't control my body. My body is doing this and that. Then we'll just try this one and close your eyes. I'll say to you all now, close your eyes and just see this juicy lemon, bite into the juicy lemon. And even as I'm talking about it, your mouth just fills with spit, because mine did. And they just said to me, we didn't realize that's how our mind controls our body. So I think when you understand how your mind controls your body, you can control it, you can make it better. And you definitely need to do the meditation, the exercise, eating properly, because you've got to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. Stacey, we're going to start wrapping up now. So what's a quick wrap up from you?
Mine too, I agree. Like, the mind is everything, and that's where it all stems from. And with touching back on the prayer and meditation, the Bible says that if we meditate on his word, like, we will be able to just have a better day, basically, in another way to say it. And that's exactly it. If we start our day right every day, regardless of how you want to do it, if it wants to be with prayer or just thinking about, like, while you were talking, I was thinking of a whole lot of words, Wolfgang, like you said, be curious. And I was like, that's such a great word, be curious. And then I thought of the word be deliberate. And, if we choose the right words for our life and words that we want to live by, it just makes us more deliberate in how we're going to achieve what we want, having that good energy.
Absolutely. I love that. There's two words that are also standing out for me, especially in the context of prayer and meditation. It is setting the intention. So perhaps Jess saying she likes to pray before she meditates, where one sets the intention, and that then the intention becomes the focus. And so the focus is then so you set the intention, then your focus is just better. If you do that during the morning or at night, your focus becomes better. And because your focus is better, it's again with the value tagging of these things aren't important. This is what I'm focusing on. And that will also save you energy, because you are now just in a so-called flow state towards what your intentions are.
And when you say setting the intention, it's like taking a trip and setting a destination. Absolutely. Having that destination in mind and being deliberate about getting there. So when we start our day in a meditative place, we are setting the intention to have a good destination.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's amazing. Jess, a quick wrap up from you.
I think the biggest sort of take home is to just notice what we're spending our energy on. What are we letting in our days, and to take stock of things that are replenishing our energy, but then what are we doing? Things that are taking our energy, but then what are we doing to replenish our energy? And obviously the thing that's going to take the most energy are the things that we dislike. So on the flip side to that, are you doing something every day that you love? Are you doing something every day to bring joy? And if we just set aside 20 to 30 minutes a day to do something for us that we love, that brings joy, then hopefully we replenish that energy tank. Because I think a lot of people don't even know what they enjoy. They don't even know what brings joy into their lives. We just get stuck in this rut of what we have to do just to get by, and we stop doing the things that we actually enjoy. So to diarize every day, do something for you that you love, that brings you joy, and hopefully everything else will naturally feel a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I think it comes to planning your life. People just go into their life and they just think it's going to plan itself. You have to plan your life. You have to plan it. Especially, I live and work all over the show. And I really have to plan a lot, because otherwise I can leave things out. And I felt so bad yesterday. I phone my mother every day. She's 97. And yesterday I just got so busy and so overwhelmed. But she goes to bed early. So by the time I realized that she'd gone to sleep already. And I felt so bad about it. And I thought, I've got to plan this better. I've got to write down these things and tick your box boxes all the time to make sure you get through, because you've got to get through a lot in the day, no matter what job you're doing, no matter where you are. There's a lot to get through in every day. So Wolfgang, a quick wrap up to you, to all the people watching today. You know, you're such a good listener. I'm the most terrible listener, but you are such a good listener. So if somebody wants to come and just, sometimes as women, we just need to bounce things off somebody else and just get another person's perspective. Is that what you do? If somebody just has something that's just holding them back, this is holding me back, how can I get over it? They can come, and how do they get hold of you to talk to you? I think Stacey put your details in there, and then they just phone you up and you come in. Do you have one session? Do you do 2 sessions? Do you have a whole lot of sessions? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this sort of stems on what Stacey had said with you know, setting the intention and having a destination where you are heading daily, but then also, so that's short term, and then we also need to think about long term. So that's definitely what I help people with. It's about perhaps, you know, depending, everyone's different in different phases in their lives. So it is also then about listening to them first. I always offer a free session to start off with, to feel out the chemistry, to listen to how I could help, and then set the proposal from there. And that's all in line with, okay, setting the direction. Maybe it's a new direction, maybe it's a redirected direction, and then helping you, guiding you through that direction, through the journey, how to get there, and also how to be okay with the outcome. And you know, that is, which sort of like in a global sphere of mindfulness, is then being okay, you know, being okay with the decisions that you make. Sometimes, you know, we, as you say, plan a lot, because we need to, you know, that's what society requires from us, but we also need to be okay with the outcome and not feel disheartened or feel like it was a failure, because no, it wasn't. It's just a learning. Yeah. And so, yes, people can definitely just contact me through either my website or on Instagram, or directly with my phone number. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. And yeah, you can also just book with, sorry, I just want to jump in there. You can book with Wolfgang on Connectable. I've posted the link, so it's a nice direct one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Wolfgang, so much for being on our show today. It's been amazing. And I wish I had your patience, because I really haven't, but I'm really going to strive to be more patient and be a better listener. And then Stacey, who have we got next week?
So next week we've got Karine on mindful eating. So going hand in hand with, raising our energy levels. So yeah, mindful eating, balanced diet, nutrition, all of that.
Okay, fantastic.
Bring your questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Questions in there. So everybody's enjoyed today's chat so much. Thank you, Charmaine, and all the girls for putting all the lovely comments in the chat now. Thank you so much, Wolfgang, for being our speaker today.
Much appreciation.
Thanks, Wolfgang.
Thank you, Stacey, for being here again. And everybody, we'll see you next week, same time, same place, Monday, 9 o'clock with Connectable Live. See you then. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a good week.
Bye.